So let's talk about the debate. This is the biggest topic. And man, you talk about an onion. You talk about a lot of stuff to be discussed, a lot of stuff to be figured out. I think the first thing we need to talk about, or I guess the first thing I will talk about, is how I thought, like, my overall reaction of the debate. And here's my overall reaction of the debate. I would compare it to if you were trying to decide who was going to win the Super Bowl by watching First Take on ESPN. If you're trying to watch Skip Bayless and Stephen A. Smith or Max Kellerman or Shannon Sharp, and you're trying to get like an actual breakdown, an actual, like, any substance at all. That's what this debate was like. It was no substance. This was not a presidential debate. Bottom line. This is not what presidential debates have been. This was theater. This was closer to reality TV than a presidential debate. Now, and I don't mean that like towards a Trump thing because of the reality TV. This was the change of the guard as far as presidential debates go. And in my opinion, this was a long time coming. We've said before that the era of politicians, the era of tried and true politics is over with. You're going to see debates look more like this than Al Gore versus Bush, right? It's going to be more of this. I mean, think about on Twitter, the only person that I saw being asked to be in the debates that people were calling for was The Rock, Dwayne The Rock Johnson. This has become professional wrestling. This is less of policy. This is less of what's going to happen in the country. This is less of who has the better plans for the future and more of who is the biggest character, who is the loudest, who has the best promo skills, who is the more cartoonish, who is the more popular, who is this, who is that. This was closer to a 10th grade debate or a 10th grade argument than a presidential debate. If this were to happen at the dinner table with children, they would both get grounded. Bottom line. As far as that goes, or as far as the debate, I don't think there's any possible way that you can be a Trump fan or a Biden fan and be like, I don't think there's any possible way that you can be on one side or the other and say, this person clearly won the debate. This person clearly looked great. If you went into it and you were going to vote for Trump no matter what, and you're coming out of it voting for Trump no matter what, whatever. Same with Biden. If you're going into it only backing Biden and you came out of it backing Biden, fine. And that's kind of the problem, right? I read a report right before the debate that 62% of both sides said that they would not change their voting stance no matter what happened in the debate. And that's kind of the issue, is that not only was the debate pointless, but it almost was pointless before it started. Nobody was going to be swayed by this debate. Nobody was going into the debate like, man, I can't wait to see what Trump's policies are versus Biden's policies. And if you're one of the people on either side who are that married to Biden or that married to Trump or that much of a hatred towards Trump or whatever it is that's causing you to vote the way you're voting, and these things don't matter to you, that's why the political system is in the dumpster. Because it's so polarized and it's so this way or that way that this kind of stuff doesn't matter when this kind of stuff should matter. Richard Nixon lost the debate or lost his presidential run against JFK because he looked kind of sweaty during the debate. That's something that is talked about decades after. Debates are a really big deal and were a really big deal. George H.W. Bush famously checked his watch during a debate, and that was enough to sway people from voting off of him. And somehow it's developed into this. It's developed into what we saw last night. I think the biggest loser last night, besides the American public, which I'm sure you'll hear a lot of, was Chris Wallace. I think Chris Wallace was terrible. I think he was 0 out of 10. I think Chris Wallace should be ashamed of himself. The last thing Chris Wallace was doing was moderating. He was debating as much as anybody else. As someone who's been an MC, and I understand that being an MC is not the same as moderating a presidential debate, but part of your job is to understand why the people are watching and what the people are doing. If Donald Trump or Joe Biden is 10 seconds over their 2-minute explanation and they're explaining a point, the American public cares more about that point and the extra minute or the extra 30 seconds or whatever than you making sure that they only have 2 minutes. And I understand the whole idea of like, well, you got to stick to rules, you got to stick to whatever. But I think that added to a lot of the chaos, was that anytime either one of these two, this was the algorithm, right? It was Trump would start a conversation, he would get interrupted. Biden would start a conversation, he would get interrupted. And then Wallace would interrupt the interrupting. And then Wallace would start arguing with the whoever was talking. And then they would move to the next point. No point was answered. This wasn't a debate. This was 3 grown men talking over each other. And it's, as far as, like, it's hard for me to sit here and say who won the debate or score the debate or go topic by topic, because I think that it was a flat out draw. I think both candidates looked pretty bad. I think both candidates came into it and performed poorly. I don't think there was any substance to be gleaned from it. And it was a 90-minute waste of time. Now, as far as what this does, I think what this does is, for Trump is in a weird spot, because when he was going up against Hillary, there was a whole bunch of, well, I'm not voting for Hillary Clinton. And Donald Trump had that whole anti-establishment kind of thing going for him, and he was kind of the bad guy or whatever. I think a lot of that has waned now. I think Biden is basically just a punching bag, where he is this complacent, old guy who is just kind of plodding along, and he's not evil. People don't look at Biden like they looked at Hillary Clinton. And so that actually works for Biden. The fact that he's almost nothing. Like sometimes with Trump, or sometimes with someone like Trump, the best thing you can be is just virtually nothing. And I think Biden exuded that with the idea that all he had to do to have positive reviews was stand up there for 90 minutes. As long as Joe Biden didn't literally collapse, I think people were going to say, man, Joe Biden had a pretty good debate. As long as he didn't openly fall apart or have to snort Adderall or forget what universe he was in, people were going to come away with that saying, hey, Joe did better than I thought he was going to do. How crazy is that? That a presidential candidate in the first debate, all they asked him to do, and they being the American public, was not have a full-on mental collapse. So I think Joe Biden succeeded in that. I think he did fine with that. I don't think Trump grilled Biden enough on some of the issues that he could have grilled Biden on. I think Biden tripped himself up a lot, and Biden tends to do this. Biden's really, really bad about numbers and the really specific things, and he always gets them wrong. If he has 91 million, he's going to be like 91 million, and he throws himself off. And I think Biden is obviously one of those guys who memorizes his notes, and if he can't remember the exact every word for word, he can't go off script. And Trump at the beginning, I thought, did a really good job of pushing Biden and trying to interrupt his thought process. And you started to see Biden get really frustrated early on. He called Trump a clown. He was, shut up, man. You're the worst president in American history. I would say that out of the two, Biden was probably the more personal. He was probably the more toxic of the two as far as what he was actually saying. The only thing Trump really said to Biden that I would clarify as a personal insult or an attack was when he said Biden was dumb. And when he said Biden couldn't remember his own college and that he was at the bottom of his class and all that stuff. You could argue the Hunter Biden thing was personal, but Joe kind of opened that up. Joe brought that up. And if you're Joe, you've got to know not to. I think that was a combination of both of them messing up. When I was watching that, I said, I didn't like to see that because of the human level. The fact that, Beau Biden died, and, it's so hard to watch a father or whatever get up there and have to talk about his son, especially that when he buried his son. But at the same time, I think it was pretty bad for Biden to bring his children into it, or to bring any of that into it. it's impossible to be like, well, would Trump have gone there anyways? I don't know. But I think that was a bad look for both sides. I think this is where I think this is a problem for Trump, though, is that his super aggressive, super aggro, super intense kind of style, it's going to turn some people off. And 4 years ago, this wasn't turning anyone off because people wanted to see Hillary Clinton get dealt that hand. They wanted to see a bully get bullied. They wanted to see Hillary Clinton get put in her place. They wanted to see the Clintons get put in their place. I'm not sure if anybody wants to see Joe Biden get put in his place, because he's so whatever. He's just this gray punching bag thing that people don't hate nor love. And so when Trump does this stuff, instead of looking like this is Donald Trump who's not backing down, this is Donald Trump who's taking it to the establishment, all of a sudden it turns into this is Donald Trump. He's being rude. He's being a bully. He's being mean. He's being whatever. And that's a problem for Trump. That's something that I think that people will be turned off by, is some people will look at, just like the sun thing, I think some people will look at it and say, well, it's kind of like a -1. It's kind of like personal fouls on both sides. So the play is offset, the penalty is offset. But I think some people will look at it like, they may be mothers, they may be fathers, they may have kids, and they may say, I hate to see kids get brought into it at all, right? The group that I think was the most negatively affected by the debate is the group who actually are not sure who they're going to vote for. Or maybe even the people who it's their first time debating or voting. The 18-year-olds, the 19-year-olds, the 20-year-olds who actually are trying to decide who to vote for. And those people garnered nothing from last night. And my fear is that this was such a fustercluck that, and I just thought of that in my head, and that was not easy to say for the first time ever. This was such a fustercluck that I think some people are going to be turned off from voting and turned off from politics and turned off from the idea of voting for a president because it's such a disaster and it's so chaotic. That is going to be the Democratic move moving forward. They're supposed to have 3 more debates, I think. There's no way they have those debates. What's going to happen is Biden's camp is going to come out and say, we did the debate. Trump broke all these rules. We're not doing that again. And their big narrative they're going to push, I'll go ahead and tell you right now, the big narrative that they're going to push is this idea that America is worth more than having to listen to that again. Now, this is a very dangerous narrative, in my opinion. I agree that the debate was embarrassing. I agree that the debate was bad. I agree that as far as television, it was borderline unwatchable. But what is more dangerous is to take the debate or take the presidential election for the leader of the free world, for arguably the most powerful position in the world, and to tuck it behind closed doors because it's a quote-unquote embarrassment. The reason that it is a quote-unquote embarrassment is because of how our media, how our mass media, how our social media, whatever you want to say, how it has groomed people to being so divisive, to being so polarized. That's the reason that we're in this situation. That's the reason that we watched a 90-minute shouting match, is because policies don't matter. What matters is wearing Timberlands. What matters is hot sauce. What matters is red hats. That's what matters nowadays. So when you go through 4 years, 6 years, 8 years of all of that not mattering, this is what it leads to. Now, what you don't do is say, this is embarrassing, we're going to put it away. If you have if you drop a glass at your house and you drop it and there's glass shards everywhere, you don't sweep it under the carpet. You don't sweep it under the rug and hope that no one notices. You just clean it up, right? So the idea that it's better for America if we do not have debates, if we do not have these candidates speaking, and that we'll just vote in a month, that is so dangerous of an idea. And that's a big difference between the debate was bad and then the American public deserves better than that debate. I think that narrative is going to be used, and it's actually kind of sick. It's actually one of those things where you see it and you see like the political moves and you see the political strategy and you see how they're trying to trick the American people. What they're trying to tell you is, look, this is so messed up. This is so screwed up. Don't even worry about it. That's what they're trying to tell you. They're trying to tell you, look, do you want to see that again? Do you want to see a couple guys screaming at each other? Do you really want to see that? No, you don't want to see that. So we're going to do you a favor. We're not even going to put it on TV. Don't worry about it. We're not even going to have the debate. We're just going to cancel them. Just go vote. Does that sound like how we should be handling the leader of the free world? Is that how it sounds like we should be handling the presidential election? I don't think so. So that narrative that I'm hearing a whole hell of a lot of is really, really, really disappointing. Now, the next thing I'll say is that what really struck me after the debate was how both sides, I saw a lot of Biden supporters who were, F Trump, flipping off the TV, get this racist out of office, get this guy out of office, this guy sucks, I hate this guy. And to me, we've talked about this before, but I think that's just as bad as people who are treating Trump like a god. I think both of those things are bad. I think both of those things are not how our politicians and how our politics in our country should be. I just don't see how you can look at that debate and be like, this is so clear. This is so clear cut. We got to vote Biden. Just like I don't see how you could watch that debate and say, man, this is so clear cut. Trump is just the greatest, man. Like both of those reactions on social media have shocked me. They really have. Now, with my personal group of friends and my family and people I've talked to, they are much more into the camp of that was disappointing. And my confidence is shaken in whoever I'm voting for. That's more of what I'm getting. And I understand that, for sure. I understand that. But I don't understand like the renewed confidence in a candidate or the renewed vigor in one way or the other. I saw some people who were like, after the debate, who were like, yep, just donated to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And it's like, what? What are we talking about? What just happened? I saw some people after the debate who were like, if you're not voting for Joe Biden after that debate, unfollow me now. I don't want you anywhere near me. And it's like, that's the problem. That divisive, this way or that way, unchanging, unlistening mindset, one way or the other, is not good. And that's what's going to get us more of this. What I would tell a voter, what I would tell somebody right now, is I would tell them to actually go and look at, what policies are on the table. Go and look at what each group is doing. What 4 years of the Democratic candidate winning versus what is 4 years of the Republican candidate winning. What's that look like, and which one of those Americas do you want? I would try and detach from both candidates. I would try and detach from either love or hate for Donald Trump, and I would try and detach for love or hate for Joe Biden. On both sides. Like, I don't think I personally think a lot of MAGA members right now are disappointed. I really do. And I think a lot of them are looking at it like, shit, man, is this really it? Is this it? And I think you have a lot of people on the other side who were hoping from something with Biden. And I mean, honestly, I don't want to get too much into the actual political weeds of it. You can go check out Ben Shapiro for that. But Biden seemed to distance himself from almost everything that got him the nomination. He distanced himself from the Green New Deal. He distanced himself from defunding the police. He distanced himself from a lot of that stuff. So if you're just a Democrat who's looking for those policies and you hear Biden say that kind of stuff, you have to be pretty disappointed in yourself, I would think. So both candidates, I think, lost. Both are just break even. It's not good. It's not good. So if you're trying to figure out who to vote for, do your best to separate yourself from the candidates. Hopefully this election will wake up people that this is real life, that this isn't a joke, that we need to get back to where policy matters. We need to get back to where these debates are actually people outlining what they're going to do for the country. I mean, the fact, I couldn't believe that we were sitting there listening to lines like, man, you're just a clown, and you were bottom of your class. Don't ever say you're smart around me. Like, those are two things you hear in like a locker room in 9th and 10th grade. I mean, this was a schoolyard. This was a schoolyard argument for 90 minutes, is what this was, and it was a rough day. It was a rough day. So I don't think the answer is to not vote. And the last thing I'll say about this, I think I relatively covered everything I want to say, but I don't think I would really advocate for people to do their research and figure out what policies and what they want America to look like and vote that way. Stay away from the dogmatic candidate mindset. Stay away from that. And we have to try and get through this election to hopefully set ourselves up for a better situation in 2024. I sure as hell hope we're not staring at a Kanye West versus The Rock 2024, and I hope we get back to actual policy. And now there is a different conversation for even if we should be having a president or if it should be like a group or whatever, but if the two-party system is outdated, but that's a different video for a different day. But not a great night. Certainly not a great night at all for anyone who watched that. I watched all 90 fucking minutes. I watched all 90 minutes, partly because of the podcast, partly because so I could talk about it with all of you, but also because I do vote. Also because I do vote. I voted in every single election that I possibly could have since I was 18 years old. So I don't know. And I'm going to have to check with Billie Eilish and see what she wants me to do. I'm going to have to check and see what, vote or die, what we have going on there, and I guess make my decision. But pretty tough stuff. So what'd y'all think, chat? What'd y'all think about the debate last night? I'll turn it over to chat and see if they have anything that they would like to add to this before we move on away from it. It was reading chat now. LMAO, it was a big yikes. Yeah, it was. It was a big yikes. It was a big yikes. It really was. I just hope it was eye-opening. I'll tell a story, and this is something else I thought of last night. Whenever I was in I seriously may have been 22 years old. I think I was 22, and we were out. I was downtown, and it's like a pub crawl was going on, and a friend of mine was blacked out drunk. And I obviously won't say who it was, but a friend of mine was blacked out drunk, and every bar he went in, he got thrown out of. And when he got thrown out of the bars, me and a group of people would cheer and whatever, get excited and applaud. And it was and as we kept going to bars, more and more people kept filing in. And so by the end of the night, there was seriously 30 or 40 people following this guy around, walking through the streets, cheering as he was getting kicked out of bars. And my point is that we were just making noise to make noise. We were just yelling and screaming because everyone else was yelling and screaming. But if you really look at what we were doing, it's I'm pretty sure that if you could take a step back, every single person in that group would have been this is kind of dumb, But in the moment, it's fun to be raucous and be out of control and just go crazy. And that's how I feel like a lot of the politics has been for the last 4 to 8 years, is that a lot of people, whether it's pro-Trump or anti-Trump, have been screaming to scream and have been yelling to yell and are excited and raucous and whatever, whether it's riots in the street, throwing Molotov cocktails through building windows, whether it's wearing MAGA hats, whether it's protesting Confederate statues, whether it's driving a truck through protesters who are whatever. I think this debate could have been a wake-up call for people to say, oh, shit, we shouldn't be doing this. Like, this is stupid. We've just been yelling to yell for this whole time. Let's get back to some actual reason. Let's get back to some actual. Look, last night there were real people who their saving grace, their hero was the idea of The Rock running. And I think that's what I'm talking about, where people's first step shouldn't be, who can fix this? Oh, I know, a movie star. Oh, I know, people's sexiest man alive. Maybe the first step needs to be, maybe we need some actual like thinkers here. Maybe we need to actually take this a little more serious. So hopefully that's the case. Going back to chat, I wouldn't be happy with either if I'm voting. Yeah, I mean, look, I voted for Trump, and if I could go back, I would vote for him again. And I will probably be voting for Trump in this election. And I have been very critical of Trump. I've been so critical of Trump that I have 100 comments in my videos saying that I'm a bleeding heart liberal. I have my own friends and family who have said I'm a liberal, even though I have voted conservative and Republican every single election that I've been able to vote for. So it's like I am right there saying that I'm very disappointed in the candidates. I'm very disappointed that we are America. We have, in my opinion, the best country in the world. We've got 300 plus million people, and we are voting for two 70-plus-year-old men who cannot be the two best options. So, like, if you look past his Twitter fingers and stuff, he has done some crazy good things. Yeah, I mean, I think he's been fine. Like, I think. Look, like, I don't think Trump is a great president, but I also don't think he's the worst president in American history. You know what I mean? And I've told this story before, but I voted for Trump because it's crazy to think about. But 4 years ago, I was concerned about strong border policy. I was concerned with Sharia law being brought in. I was concerned with stuff like that. I was concerned with that was my world. And it's funny that 4 years later, nobody gives a shit about anything like that. Like, nobody cares about that. There was none of that, like, actual issues being brought up in the debate. There was none of that. It was all COVID. Like, do you wear a mask? Do you not wear a mask? It was how smart you are, how dumb you are. It was just name calling, and it was nothing to do with actual issues, so it is what it is. But it's tough, man. It's really tough. Really, really tough. I hate to belabor it. I hate to just focus on, because I know people don't want to focus on it. I know people don't want to talk a lot about it, and I don't blame them. I think disconnection right now is a real thing. I mean, I've talked to people. Look, me and my friend group, we're all very connected in politics. We all have our own beliefs. We all have our own set of values. 4 years ago, we were talking about primaries. We were talking about debates. We were talking about policy all day long. And this cycle has not been like that. This cycle, the same group of people are like, get me to election day so I can be done with this shit. And I think that that's a reflection of, it's just kind of become an embarrassment. It's just kind of become, I don't even know the word to put it, a big yikes, I guess, like chat said. It's just become a big yikes. And it's unfortunate. It really is. It really is. I think it's embarrassing on both sides. I think either way, if you're polarized to either side, I think that's embarrassing.